I'm going to start with, what's your name, how old are you, and where are you from?
I'm Sheri Lacker, daughter of Marty Lacker from the Memphis Mafia. I'm 64 and was born in East Tennessee, but I've lived all over the United States, but Memphis is what we call home.
Awesome. And how did you become an Elvis fan?
Well, honestly, I'm not necessarily qualified as a fan. I was kind of born into the inner circle of Elvis and his family in the Memphis Mafia.
Awesome. And so you spent, obviously, being the daughter of Marty Lacker, you spent some time at Graceland. You guys lived at Graceland for a couple years. So can you tell me a little bit about that?
It was about the same year that Priscilla moved in, late 62 or early 63. And we lived in the little, what they call the annex now, and it's where the VIP buses are dropped off. But anyway, we lived in that one room for the time being. My brother was born at that time already, but my sister Angie was born while we lived there. So she's one of the only two people that have Elvis Presley's home address on her birth certificate. So that, just our lives kind of revolved around that. So.
Yeah. So you're one of the few people that could say lived inside the house. And so what was it like having a father who was traveling with Elvis, spending a lot of time away from home?
It was a double-edged sword. There was good times, there was bad times. Sometimes Mama had to be the dad and the mom. It opened up experiences to us that we would have never probably enjoyed in another life. We got to go see different places, got to experience, things like Las Vegas and Hawaii, and it just is very unique. And I didn't realize the importance of it, if you would call it, of being involved in that in my childhood until much, much later, until I started participating in the fan events and things like that.
Yeah. And your father was very involved in a lot of things that people may not realize. So, naming of Elvis Presley Boulevard.
Right. He was on the music commission at that point, and one of the city council members who was also on the music commission had known that he was involved with Elvis and knew he had, friendship with Elvis. And so the mayor at the time, who was Henry Loeb, got in touch with the councilman. The councilman got in touch with Daddy. They had been dealing with an ongoing thing of, I think a fan club had started that they wanted to name either the Coliseum in Memphis or something after Elvis, but Elvis or his family never got back with him. So the mayor wanted to put this to rest finally, and he said, the guy asked him, he said, can you get Elvis's ear and find out, if he would mind us naming something after him? And and the guy said, well, what do you think we ought to do? He said, I know he doesn't want the Coliseum because he would be afraid that he would, give other artists that came to play there, it would be like dismissing their worth. And anyway, so Daddy suggested, he said, how about the street in front of Graceland? And the guy liked it, so they got in touch with Vernon because Elvis wasn't in town. And sure enough, they dedicated all the way from, I think, Winchester Road in Memphis all the way down to the state line. And it became Elvis Presley Boulevard.
Yeah. And he was very involved with Memphis music as well. Yes. He's got a note on Beale Street. So a little bit about that.
Yeah, he in '67 he left Elvis's payroll, but he remained as a good friend and one of the Memphis Mafia and traveled with him when he could. But he opened his own promotion and production company, and he started the Grammy division that Memphis represents. He also did Memphis Music Awards, and he also, with Elvis, Daddy had worked with Chip's Moment at American Recording Studios, and Daddy wanted him to work with Chips because he knew Chip's talent, his unique way of doing things, and he knew it'd be a perfect fit. And so finally, he mentioned it to Elvis, and then Elvis said, you know, I don't know about all that. So he was kind of poo-pooing on it, and my dad got a little agitated, you know, and he said, it's not right that he's doing this because he doesn't get the good songs or anything. And so Elvis thought about it. Daddy stayed in there. He said, tell Marty come in here and eat dinner. We're all eating dinner. And he said, no, I don't feel like eating. And then one of the other guys came out and said, Elvis wants you to come talk to him about recording at American Studios. And the guys that were on the studio album, the tracks that they did, will tell you, and they've written in their books, that Marty was solely responsible for Elvis and Chip's getting together.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So the last thing is about this book, Portrait of a Friend, by Marty Lacker, Patsy Lacker, and I'm blanking on the third person. There's a third person.
It was a writer they just happened to have recommended to him. Ironically, his last name was Smith, but he wasn't a relation to Billy and Joe.
But I love, I love Marty's part, but I love your mother's part in that. She was very honest and open about some of the, you know, the issues that the mothers and the wives had to deal with. So
yeah, the writer actually named her chapters "Wife" was a 4-letter word because at that juncture, Elvis had Priscilla as his girlfriend, but they had not been married. There was no children. A lot of the guys had not had children yet, but my mom and dad had 2 kids first, and then my sister was, you know, born while we were up there. And Joe Smith, Billy and Joe Smith, were the only other ones that were married and had a kid at that juncture. And kids just weren't allowed on the tour bus because, as you can imagine, it just wasn't, you know, a good atmosphere for her. And you know, she did become resentful, and, you know, like all the other guys, and my dad would tell you, you know, openly that he got on sleeping pills and drugs and stuff, and he always chose Elvis over everything else.
Yeah, well, I love this book because it is so honest. It's an honest book, and I love that. I just wish more of the wives had written books because it's such a unique perspective. And then the third part of the book has, you know, interviews with, you know, like Dave Hebler from you know, Elvis, What Happened. And it's in 1978, so 1 year after the book came out. So I've read about 100 Elvis books in the last 2 years, and this is in my top 2 books, top two, 3 books, and I recommend it to everybody.
Parents,
yeah, so I highly recommend people read this book. It's Portrait of a Friend, and thank you so much for talking to me.
Welcome,
and
I
think Marty Lacker deserves more credit as a Memphis Mafia member.
Thank you so much. It does my heart good to hear somebody say that.
Yeah, so thank you.
You're welcome.